Donovan Ezeiruraku is the most interesting player in the NFL draft. A defensive lineman that doesn't defend the run very well, doesn't have a lot of power, is extremely undersized, and yet may go in the first round solely due to the one skill set that he does better than anyone else. And today, we're going to take a look at him as a prospect, take a look at his potential fit with the Detroit Lions as he's being mocked there several times over the last few weeks, and just kind of go over him as a prospect out of Boston College as he prepares to potentially be a top 32 pick. So, with that being said, let's take a look at Devon Ezeiruraku. As the 6'2", 237-pound edge rusher, had a fantastic career at Boston College, a 4-year starter and a senior last season. Ezeiruraku recorded in his career 215 tackles, 47 tackles for loss, 30 tackles, 8 forced fumbles, 4 passes defended, and 76 pressures. In 2022, he was named to second team All-ACC defense, and in 2024, he received the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, a 2024 consensus All-American nod, as well as winning the Ted Hendricks Award for the best defensive end in college football. He has been one of the best players in the ACC over the last few years, and despite a down year in 2023, he's been really productive for Boston College over his 4-year career with the Eagles. Now, his senior year was by far the best, as in 2024, he played 12 games for Boston College, where he totaled 80 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, 16 and a half sacks, 3 forced fumbles, a pass defended, and of course, got the All-American and ACC Defensive Player of the Year awards. He was one of the best pass rushers in college football. He was the second most productive pass rusher in college football behind just Mike Green from Marshall, another player we'll do a video about later on in a couple of weeks. And overall, he was one of the most productive rushers we've seen in college football in quite some time. Now, as an athlete, Ezeiruraku is just okay, right? He's a good athlete, not a great athlete. He's not going to wow you, but you're not going to look at his RAS score and be super disappointed by the numbers that you see. A 7.99 overall puts him just outside the 80th percentile as an athlete. He graded out with really poor size, which is, I think, the biggest concern for him going pro, but with great explosiveness, elite agility, a 4.19 shuttle, and a 6.943 cone. Pair that with a 35.5-inch vert and a 9'11" broad jump, you have yourself a pretty good athlete. And if he was just a few inches taller and a few pounds heavier, he'd probably be in the mid-8s, if not the low 9s, as far as his overall RAS score. For the things that he can control, he was really good. For the things that he can't control as far as height goes, fortunately, it just kind of is what it is. But that height and really the weight issues haven't stopped him from being an incredibly productive player at the collegiate level. Strengths for Donovan Ezeiruraku include his fluid hips, his long arms. He's a good athlete with great bend, and I think he is good with his first step. He is a very finesse rusher, for what it's worth, right? He reminds me very much of the Von Miller, of the James Houston, of that style of edge rusher, where he's not going to run through you. He's not going to bull rush you. He's not going to, be this big monstrous force that's going to put you on your backside, but he is good enough in other situations, right? If it's a pass rushing situation, he's going to be on the field because he's going to get to the quarterback. Shaquille Barrett is another really good option, kind of another really good comparison for the style of play that he is. And I think that that's a good comparison as well. A player that is very fluid, a player that is, really good with the finesse style of rush, and a player that's going to go around you 10 times out of 10 before he even tries to go through you. And while that style of play can be stopped and it can be prepared for a lot easier than a well-rounded player, Donovan Ezeiruraku is so good at the finesse rush. He's so good at getting around you. It almost doesn't matter that that he can't go through. It almost doesn't matter that he can't defend the run. It almost doesn't matter that his play strength isn't very high because he's so fluid. He's so quick. He has such good hands, and he's such a good pass rusher. He's going to get to the quarterback anyway. And that's what has a lot of Lions fans excited, right? He looks a little bit like what prime James Houston did in his rookie season, and who got 8 sacks in 7 games, who, again, didn't defend the run, wasn't really big, strong, or great at defending anything other than getting to the quarterback. And yet in 7 games, he had 8 sacks because he was just simply that good of a pass rusher. That's kind of the player you're looking at in Donovan Ezeiruraku. Ezeiruraku. Now, as far as player comps go, there are a couple. I've named them in this video. I think James Houston is an interesting one for play style. I think that Shaquille Barrett's an interesting one just for a size and production potentially. But I think the best one is Yannick Ngakoue, a player that almost is exactly identical as size-wise goes, was really productive at Maryland when he was coming out of the NFL draft, and I think compares really, really well. Taking a look at their final 2 years, Ezeiruraku, of course, had 80 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, and 16 and a half sacks with 3 forced fumbles. And Ngakoue, a little bit less, but still a good season, right? 15 tackles for loss, 13 and a half sacks, 1 forced fumble on 38 tackles. He didn't have nearly as many tackles, but as far as TFLs go, as far as sacks go, they were fairly comparable as prospects. And as far as measurables go, well, 6'2", 237 versus 6'2", 250, 34-inch arms versus 32.5-inch arms. And I think overall, I think Yannick Ngakoue is a good segue for play style as well, right? More of a finesse than a power guy, somebody who's going to get probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sacks on the season, right? He's always going to be productive. Yannick had almost half a decade, maybe a little more, of consistent 8 to 10 sacks a season for any team that he was on. He was good for the Jaguars. He was okay for the Vikings. He went to, the Raiders for a little bit, and he had, I think, 4 or 5 seasons of 8 to 10 sacks, which for a late first round pick, you could do a lot worse than. The problem is I don't think the Detroit Lions have any interest in a player like Donovan Ezeiruraku. A player that can't defend the run doesn't have a place in Detroit, and it's been shown and evident over and over and over again. It's why Josh Paschal still has a job, and it's why James Houston doesn't. It's why, John Kaminsky stuck around for so long and Zadarius Smith got 8 games. It's why, certain players are coming back and certain players are being left on the chopping block. The Lions value stopping the run more than just about anything on the defensive line. It's why they gave Lee McNeil such a big contract. It's why they drafted Broderick Martin. It's why they, signed Roy Lopez this offseason. It's why they gave all of this money out to the players that could stop the run. It's why they like Marcus Davenport more than Zadarius Smith. It's not because he's a better pass rusher. It's because Marcus Davenport can set an edge, can stop the run, and is a big, powerful, physical player. That's the style that they like. And even just a few hours ago, Kelvin Shepherd came out and said, we don't care how good you are as a pass rusher. There's no place here for a DPR, a designated pass rusher. There is no place in Detroit for just a third down rusher, and certainly no place for just a third down rusher in the first round for the Detroit Lions. It just isn't going to happen. So while I think Ezeiruraku is a very talented player, while I think he is very much worthy of a late first, early second round pick, he just doesn't fit what the Lions like. He's not a Detroit Lions player, and it has nothing to do with his attitude. It has nothing to do with his grit. It has nothing to do with even really his ability to get to the quarterback. What it has to do with is he's simply too small. And as unfair as that may be, as, ridiculous as that may sound, that's the point for the Detroit Lions. That is a point of emphasis that they stick to over and over and over again. To play for the Detroit Lions, you must stop the run, you must get to the quarterback, and you must be consistent. Every player on the Detroit Lions defensive line fits those qualities. You're not going to find a single player on the Lions defensive line that can't stop the run, that cannot get to the quarterback at least a few times a season, even though they're not fantastic pass rushers outside of Hutch. And you're not going to find a lot of players that aren't willing to defend the run and do everything they can to help the team. That is their style of player. And while, Ezeiruraku may fit 2/3, 3/4 of that mantra, he just unfortunately can't stop the run at a high enough level. He doesn't have the strength to do it. He doesn't have the size to do it. That's a natural thing. There's no fixing that. There's no developing that. So while they may miss out on one of the best pure pass rushers in this class, they're going to do so for a more well-rounded player and certainly a better player overall, and as far as well-roundedness goes. I wouldn't be surprised if Ezeiruraku was completely off their board entirely. I wouldn't be surprised if, they have not a 4th round grade, but they have a note that says, unless he's there extremely late and, day 2 or early day 3, he's just not a value for us. So with that being said, that is my take on Donovan Ezeiruraku, a great player as an individual, a good player in a vacuum. I think will go top 50 in the draft. I just don't think he's going to be a Detroit Lion. So with that being said, it's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below your opinions on Ezeiruraku. Do you want him to be a Lion? Do you think I'm wrong? Let me know. I'm curious to hear what you guys think in your opinions. Of course, let me know down in the comments below your opinions as far as what players you want to see, what draft breakdowns you want, what prospect analyses you want to see. I want to do the prospects that you want to see. I want to talk about the players that you want to know about. So if you have a player you want to hear about, you have a player you want to talk about, let me know in the comments down below, and we'll make a video as soon as possible. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always,